Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I'm honored to have Isaac Rochell with me. Isaac is NFL football player, former Notre Dame guy. So if you have any bias against Notre Dame, no judgment there. And he and his wife are growing a social media platform at a astounding rate. And one of the things I'm super excited about to highlight in his story is how oftentimes the way things play out may not have been the way we would have liked, but we can make the best out of the opportunity and explore all the options. So thanks so much for being on today, brother.
Absolutely. I love doing stuff like this because, kind of the premise of your podcast, it's nice to just kind of like recap where you're
Yeah.
at, right? Even that intro. So I appreciate it.
You betcha. Well, so starting off, you are not the only son in your family or child in your family that wanted to play football. So talk a little bit about growing up in, I would imagine a relatively competitive natured household with you and some siblings.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that. We definitely were in a competitive household with me and my brother both playing sports our whole lives. But my dad was never the type to he was never like the helicopter parent with
Yeah.
sports. So a lot of what we did was very organic, fun, chill. It was never like pressured. But about like more specifically to football. So my brother started playing football when he was in, I think his first year would have been like when he was in eighth grade. And for me, kind of back to this competitive piece, I'm like, well, if he's playing football, I want to play football. So that's kind of what got me into football. But yeah, it was a huge piece of, I think, my like football career and sports career, because we were able to feed off of each other in a lot of different ways. We were able to play on the same football and basketball teams because we were close enough in age. But yeah, being in a household with a brother who plays is huge. I don't know if you had siblings that
Yeah.
played growing up, but it's a game changer.
Absolutely. Well, you're always wanting to be better than them. So there's that constant desire to go out and get some extra shots up for me. I played basketball. I was not a football guy like yourself, but yeah, I had to get some
For
extra
sure.
jumpers up.
Well, and yeah, when you're the younger, like
Yeah,
the younger sibling, you kind of are like, okay, whatever they did, I have to do better, right?
absolutely.
And not even in like a one-on-one environment, but more so like, okay, they made varsity their sophomore year, I got to do it my freshman year. So it definitely lays the groundwork for success for the younger child.
Absolutely. Now, for you, as you're kind of progressing and getting older, you have the opportunity to play football, but you also really enjoyed basketball. And early on, probably enjoyed basketball maybe more than football. So, talk a little bit about the early days of that, piece of the athletic journey for you.
Absolutely. So I definitely love basketball way more. I mean, I played basketball. I'll wait for my dog to pass. So I played basketball like literally from the time that I was like super little, as early as I can remember, until really like my sophomore year of high school. Um, and it was my first love. But what happened was I'm in ninth grade. I'm like trying to play varsity basketball, and I thought I was good. But at the same time, I'm getting literally like colleges coming to talk to me for football. So I'm just being calculated. I'm like, man, like, why would I waste any time doing basketball? I know it's fun. I know you have great friendships in the locker room and stuff, but I'm like, why would I waste any time doing this if I know for a fact
Hmm.
I'm probably going to play college football? And then I got my first offer from Boston College
Yeah.
when I was a sophomore, and I had played like pretty much no like real football. And I was like, okay, right now, worst case scenario, if everything went south, I could go play at Boston College. It's not a bad option.
No.
So then that's when I kind of like, retired from basketball. But I watch basketball and I'm like, dang, it would have been kind of nice to, do that, like go down that road. But the opportunity just wasn't there like it was for football.
Yeah. Now, as you focused on football, you started to have to change your body a little bit, from maybe a little bit more finesse and basketball style to, a little bit bigger in football style. And as you did that, you started to see more and more success on the field, and there was a lot of team success. And as a senior, you guys end up winning the state championship. So, talk a little bit about, that progression for you through high school.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a lot of carryover from basketball to football. I think just like overall athleticism,
Yeah.
developing that, there's a lot of carryover. Also, at the time, I was a string bean. I was trying to play receiver. I was trying to be a pretty boy. So there was even more carryover, right? Like,
Right.
playing a power forward, and then going and trying to be a tight end. There's a little bit more carryover than power forward to defensive end, right?
Yeah.
So at the time it was perfect, but just continue to do both. And then like you said, our high school was so sports oriented, and we had such a good sports program that the putting on the weight, the developing and all those things came really natural because our head football coach was a psycho about it. And you're right. Yeah. By the time we became a senior, it was very okay, we're rolling, firing on all cylinders. We actually lost the first game of our senior year. And I remember I need to be the Tim Tebow. And
Yeah.
kind of we won't lose another game. And then we went on to win a state championship.
Yeah.
Kind of changed the trajectory of our high school too, because our high school went on to win multiple state championships after that. But yeah, it's crazy. It all starts with the leader, right? The head
Yeah.
football coach. I mean, he kind of changed it for a lot of guys, not just me.
So talking about that, and I'll tie in kind of two sub stories for you. And that is, sometimes it's impactful to see someone else do it first because it sets a bar of, all right, well, I know I need to do at least this to get there. So your brother, he goes and plays at Air Force, right? So for you, the Division 1 expectation, we already talked about that. If you did this, I got to do this plus.
Right.
So the Division 1 was already the non-negotiable, but then above and beyond. And similarly with your high school, right? Hey, you guys set the bar, win a state championship, and now that lays the groundwork for years to come and being able to accomplish. So talk a little bit about that, having someone in your life or something in your life that really sets the bar and can pave the way for, what your trajectory should be.
Yeah, I think it's everything. I mean, I think having somebody in front of you is the game changer, right? Because otherwise your standard of success is what you
Yeah.
make it out to be. And that could be anything. It's not your fault if your standard of success just happens to be lower. If you don't have an example that's big. So yeah, my brother, we'll just start with him. He was the type of guy where he really overachieved in football. Like
Yeah.
him going to Air Force and starting and having a great career there was him. He's I'm going to maximize this.
Yeah.
However, for me, when I would go on visits with him and I would see his experience, it really did create a standard that's I'm not going anywhere worse football wise than Air Force, right?
Yeah.
Not only that, it's not just about football, right? Like my mom's a school teacher, and then he went to a really, really good academic school. I'm not going to a worse academic school than Air Force.
Yeah.
So then I end up at Notre Dame. So
Yeah.
you're exactly right. Had he gone somewhere else where maybe academics weren't such a big deal, or overachieving wasn't such a big deal, maybe I don't go to Notre Dame. Who knows? And then the side, within my high school, I mean, it's so true. We literally we took it upon ourselves to, like I said, change the trajectory of the football program. And it's so crazy because guys after me, I'm the only guy in my high school to ever go to the NFL.
Mm.
Guys have made it to training camps. Nobody's played in an NFL game. I'm the only person to do it. And I don't think people understand, if you're playing with somebody like that in high school, you don't understand how big of a difference that makes in your mentality, how you approach everything, because it takes
Yeah.
a lot to make it to the NFL.
Right.
So, I mean, it's exactly what you're saying, though. For me, I was fortunate to have somebody that set that elite standard of sports and academics. And then I'm also super happy, for the guys after me, I was able to do that.
Yes. Now, as you're progressing, like you said, you end up signing with Notre Dame, which, I mean, if you have an offer from Notre Dame, you probably have an offer from darn near every school because, I mean, that's just the type of program that it is.
Yeah.
And you elect to go there. And I always think there's, this interesting dynamic of you go somewhere because you see a future, but you also have no idea how it's going to play out, right? Every year they're recruiting the next Isaac, right? I mean, there's somebody else coming through to be competitive. So for you in your program, what was it that ultimately led you to Notre Dame? I know high academics, but what was it ultimately that led you there? And then talk about the progression from your freshman year on.
Absolutely. So it's funny you talk about these programs and even Notre Dame. I didn't know anything about Notre Dame. When I tell you, like if you'd have been like, is Notre Dame a good football team? When I was in like 10th grade, I'd have been like, I have no clue. Like does Notre Dame play football?
Yeah.
Didn't know anything about him. You know Rudy, right? But like I
Yep.
didn't know
Yeah.
anything about Notre Dame. And I really had no interest in Notre Dame. They weren't on my radar. I would have never thought about them. But they sent Bob Diaco, who's the defensive coordinator at the time, to come
Yeah.
down to Notre Dame and recruit me. And again, I'm like, okay, like, here's this clean cut white dude who's in here, like slick. Like, I don't know. I don't know anything about Notre Dame still, but it was a cool experience. And one of our teachers, he's like a history teacher, came up to me and he was like, Isaac, I hope you understand it's like a huge deal that Notre Dame's here. He's
Mm.
from Ohio, so he got like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Me growing up in Georgia, it's like SEC or you're trash.
Mm.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
religion. So he said that, and then I go home. I'm telling my mom about Notre Dame. She's from Minnesota. She's a teacher. She understands the academic piece. And so basically my parents make me go visit. And we drove up. We weren't the type of family that was flying to these places. So we drove from Georgia to Notre Dame. And I remember driving into South Bend. And I don't Phil, have you been to South Bend?
I have not to a game, but I've been to there.
Well, that's even worse because if
Yeah.
you're not going to a game, you're like, yikes, this
There's
place is
nothing
not
there.
great. So that was me. We drive in and I'm looking around and I'm like, I remember literally telling my mom, like, I'm glad I'm coming to see this because I know there's a lot of history, but I don't know if this is really the place for me. When
Yeah.
I tell you not even an hour later, I'm like, I can't see myself going anywhere else but here.
Wow.
It's very hard to explain. Lou Holtz talks about it all the time. You can't explain it to people. Like it's
Yeah.
a special feel. Unfortunately, you haven't been to a game. That is a game changer in the
You gotta
experience.
say, hey, we gotta go to one. We gotta go
Yeah,
to one.
done deal. No, it's great. It's great going to the games. But I didn't even go to a game my first time, but just walking around, spent some time with Manti Te'o, which was crazy. Like, but
Yeah.
at the time, I didn't even know like anything about him.
Yeah.
Right. And then following that conversation, you fast forward a year later, dude's a Heisman candidate, but I knew
Yeah.
nothing about him. But anyways, I just showed up on their campus and I was like, yeah, I fit this. This makes sense.
Yeah, I love it. So in your time there, it doesn't take long for you to really get started playing. I mean, I think as a freshman, you played like in 11 of the games, which once again, that's saying something. There's a big difference between an 18-year-old freshman, 24-year-old, double redshirted senior, from a physicality and just a knowledge-based standpoint. So talk a little bit about that progression for you getting started or getting playing as a freshman, then getting the opportunity to start the next year.
Yeah, so I think my freshman year at Notre Dame was definitely just a whirlwind. I mean, maximum survival mode. Like a very interesting beginning of my freshman year where I was kind of like, I don't even know if this is the right fit.
Mm.
But like I just stuck with it because that's just part of like dealing with situations.
Yeah.
And then yeah, like you said, I played in most of the games. I don't think I was really like ready to play. Like I wasn't productive in any way, shape, or form. But I was in there getting
Yeah.
experience. And then fast forward to my sophomore year. I mean, second year of anything is way easier. Second year of the NFL for me was way easier. So for me, spring training, I was starting to get my feet wet, feeling comfortable, was competing for a starting spot because
Yeah.
the depth is just a little different in college. Like I feel like if you got recruited, you're competing for a starting spot,
Absolutely.
right? And then the guy that was in front of me got essentially kicked out of school. Like
Mm.
crazy situation. And I remember defensive end coach came up to me and he's like, congrats, you're the starting defensive end at Notre Dame. And I was like, I mean, okay, we'll see what happens. And then just fast forward, I played for 3 straight years, didn't miss any games, and had like a really productive career. But my first year was like a whirlwind.
Yeah. Now, playing at that high of a level, I'm sure there's a gazillion memories that stand out, but what are one or two of the, most amazing games that you got to be a part of, whether it's on the road or at home, just in your college career?
Yeah, so I think like the game that stands out the most, we played Michigan my junior year.
Yeah.
Brian Van Gorder was a defensive coordinator. He had like some crazy Michigan beef. And so like in his mind, this was the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Like this game was it. And we ended up beating them. I think it was like 33-0. It was a crazy game.
Yeah.
But Max Redfield, or no, Elijah Shoemate got an interception the end of the game. It was just like a crazy play when it scored. It ended up getting called back. But like that moment, I mean, that was like the loudest Notre Dame's ever been. Craziest win because we just smacked Michigan. It was
Yeah.
the last game in the Michigan series for like, however many, it was like 5 years they didn't play. And then there was obviously so much hype behind it with our defensive coordinator. And then that was kind of like the last of it because then finished that year ended weird. And then my senior year, we were horrible. So like it was just, you're in the blender the whole time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the game that will stand out to me probably forever.
I love it. Now, speaking to that, I think there's two elements that, people that haven't played collegiate sports, I've never played pro sports, but that they miss out on is one, as a player, you get a lot of noise around you, right? You can never do things perfectly. So you're constantly hearing that. But then when you're at as prestigious a school as Notre Dame and a historied football program, to not have a winning record is really not okay. So, I
No.
mean, talk about just battling adversity and what you do as an individual, but as a team, just making sure you're showing up every day and trying to get better.
Yeah. Well, I just to lay some framework. So we
Yeah.
went 4-8 my senior year.
Yeah.
I was elected a captain, which was a huge honor.
Yeah.
In my mind, I don't know that I was fully prepared to be in a leadership role when I
Mm.
look back, like we talked about hindsight 2020.
Yeah.
And so like the way I dealt with that year was like, I mean, I was in such a whirlwind. I was
Mm.
overthinking the draft process, way
Yeah.
too early, overthinking the agent process. Some of these things are not my fault, right? Like there's external forces that play a role.
Yep.
Overthinking the agent process, overthinking my draft stock, overthinking our record, overthinking how I'm playing. And it's like I should have just been focused on just playing, right? And
Yeah.
caring about my teammates and winning, because winning
Yeah.
solves a lot of problems. Um, but unfortunately it didn't happen that way. So about kind of what you were asking, like you're at Notre Dame, you're losing. It is super stressful when you're a captain and like you're like, man, these coaches are like big time on the hot seat because these
Right.
boosters and all these people who care will run you out of here so fast. It was really stressful. And again, all the NFL stuff didn't help. But I look back at my senior year and I'm like, man, that was like it was just not the best year because it was so stressful.
Yeah. Well, and someone listening right now, you're saying, well, gosh, Phil, how does this apply to me? I haven't played in the NFL or I haven't played at Notre Dame and had to juggle that. But in your own personal life, maybe things in your marriage are rocky, but you still got to show up as a parent. You still got to show up at work and excel. You still want to take care of yourself physical fitness wise. So there's that constant battle, right? Where when things aren't going right, how do we maintain all the other things in our life and not let all of the glass balls drop to the ground, right? How do we continue to
Right.
juggle as many as we can as we're getting through situations?
Yeah, and I think it's also just like utilizing resources,
Mm.
like leaning on good habits, like all
Yeah.
these simple things. I think that like make people like good leaders,
Yeah.
right? Like being vulnerable, being like humble, all these things. It's a game changer. But I do think there's a lot of parallels between this. I mean, listen, football is just a sport, right? Like it's a sport. Like people have jobs, like people, like you said, are parents. So I agree. I think there's a lot of parallel.
You bet. Now, while you're in college, you go on a date. You may have went on multiple dates with different people. I don't know, but you went on at least one. And at some point after the date, you thought you were sending your brother a text, and it goes to somebody else. So, talk a
That's
little bit about this special lady.
Yeah, little. You must have listened to a little Babe in the Braids podcast or something.
I do my
That
research, brother.
yeah, he said I know what I'm doing. So yeah, I listen. Me meeting Allie, my wife, was super random. We just so she was dating somebody at the time. Not her, excuse me. Her sister was dating somebody at the time. That played for Notre Dame. She just came down with her sister. She went to Michigan State to visit Notre Dame. We randomly met at a party, and we were both in the perfect times in our lives to just be like full send with each other.
Yeah.
And we spent a lot of really like quality moments together early on and getting to know each other. And yeah, it's funny because so we went on our first date, and listen, I'm smoother now than I was then. I was a cornball, country boy from Georgia, grew up on a farm, whatever. So I'm just like hype. I'm texting my brother, bro, I think I met my wife. This girl was great. I never go out. The one time I do, I meet this girl. And then I sent it to her. And I'm like, are we serious? That's what we come up with, Isaac? We're sending. I mean, it was embarrassing, but it did work out because then she knew how I felt. She knew how I felt. So
Yeah.
it was smooth. That was probably the smoothest thing I did do on
Yeah.
accident. But yeah, so we went on. I mean, our relationship from that point on, like that was 10 years ago. It's like, I mean, we've done everything together since then. Super thankful for her.
Yes. Now, including all of the things is so after senior year, you enter the NFL draft and you get picked and you go to the Chargers. And so talk a little bit about just the draft process, getting drafted, and then navigating, all right, now I'm in the NFL. This is a job. It's time to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with just the draft process. The draft process is again a whirlwind. And I know I'm just saying whirlwind, whirlwind, whirlwind. Literally from what, like the beginning of 2016 until 2017. I mean, it was a just like what is going on?
Yeah.
Um, so it's just becomes very stressful. So I was like, I did Senior Bowl, I did Combine, I did Pro Day, I did all these things that are set up to put you in a high stress, both physically and mentally environment.
Yeah.
Starting with the Senior Bowl, it's just like you get there, you're practicing every day, but you're also not going to sleep till 1 every day because of these random interviews. Again, 31 of these teams don't care about you and they're not going to draft you, but you still have to go through the process.
Yeah.
And I'm super thankful that I went through it. However, I would not want to do it again. So finish the Senior Bowl. I think it helped my draft stock. And then I got to the combine where I think my draft stock might have dropped a little bit. I didn't really run very fast. Some of the tests like body fat and stuff, I don't think I was like really in a place where I needed to be that would have been attractive to a team. But again, very high stress. You're there for 5 days, 3 of the days you don't do anything physical. Yeah, I mean, I don't even think people realize that. You're just there stressed.
Yeah.
And then after that pro day, I pulled my hamstring at the combine. I think like mainly due to the fact that I was under so much physical and mental stress that I just literally like my body was like, boy, we're done. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
hamstrings done. But then so I didn't really do pro day. And then we get to the draft. And I'm doing all the draft stuff in New York because at the time I was signed with Rock Nation, and the 40/40 Club is owned by Rock Nation. So I'm like, all right, I'm a big dog. I'm gonna have a big dog draft celebration. In my mind, I thought I was gonna go like I could go early as late second round all the way to like maybe the fourth, fifth.
Yeah.
And so we're there literally every day. I mean, days are passing. I tell people the story. I won't say what team, but like in the fourth round, a team texts me and goes, like they had a pick and like 2 picks, and they're like, you're going to be the next great blank, and put their team name. Like fourth round, easy money.
Yeah.
Didn't work out. They didn't draft me. They drafted another defensive end. And so I'm like, dang. And then, I thought the Bears were going to draft me, but they traded for Trubisky. So they were like, hey, we wanted to draft you, but can't do anything.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to gather everybody because I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go undrafted. So I'm trying to get our whole crew to leave this club immediately. And then as I'm going to, get everybody because I'm super mad, Tom Telesco calls me and I'm a Charger. And then at that point, the whole vibe of everybody went from like, this was super stressful and like annoying to like, this is literally the best day we've ever had.
Yeah. Now, with that, I mean, to your point, it's like all the culmination of all the hard work you've put in, all the hours spent, all the support from different people, right? You comes to this moment. And at the same token, it's like the journey's just beginning, right? As a 7th round draft pick, you are promised zero. It's not like you're, the first 10, first 15 picks where it's like, all right, here's this mega contract and you're probably going to start day one. It's like, nope, now it's time to do everything you did freshman year in Notre Dame all over again and try and earn your spot.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. I will say the good thing is getting drafted. I would tell anybody that if you're Mr. Irrelevant, I mean, Purdy is quite literally the best possible example in human history.
Correct.
Getting drafted is a game changer. because they sat down and they chose you with one of their options.
Yep.
So yeah, I went in and I knew that it was kind of going to be one of those situations where I had to grind, and I was prepared for whatever. My first experience was OTAs, which in my mind, when I got to OTAs, I'm like, this is training camp, which it's not. Now I
No.
don't look at OTAs like that, but at the time I did. And it was just, everything was kind of, because it was new, it was difficult. My first training camp was very, very difficult. But I think I learned so much from my first year. And I think the Chargers had like a special appreciation for me and a special type of investment that like you can't put a dollar amount on in me. So my time with the Chargers was great. And I looking back, especially in those first 2 years, I'm like, man, they really like they showed love.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about, getting into the NFL and, I guess it's something that you've seen your whole life, and then to actually be out there suiting up and, saying, all right, well, I got to now contribute to this.
Yeah. First off, there's nothing like it, right? Like people are like, how's it being in the NFL? I'm like, it's a dream. It's a dream. And it really is. Not to change the subject, but like, we recently just saw all these tweets from Byron Jones, who's like, hey, don't play football. You're going to tear up your body. I can't walk. Some of that's true, right? Like there's a physical piece, but at the end of the day, like what we're doing is an absolute dream come true. I would tell anybody to do it, right? Like, I would trade this life with somebody so they could understand how great it is. But it was it really is like a dream job. What was your original question? No, I got distracted with the Byron Jones.
You're good. No, just, but then performing, right? So it's one
Yeah,
thing to like
exactly.
live this dream up, but now it's like, but now I'm here and now I have to excel.
For sure. And that's where like the pressure comes in. I remember I got drafted and I was with Ronnie Stanley, who was 6th overall pick, and he was like, I know you're excited you got drafted, but like it's like now the job starts.
Right.
Absolutely true. Like my first training camp, when I was like, man, I'm like, I just went through all these exciting times, and like I might lose my job.
Yeah.
And I could be on a different team. And it's really like, it's intense. And then as you get older and you keep playing in the NFL, even now, you realize like this is performance driven. Not all the time now, because there's some crazy politics in the NFL that I won't get into. But yeah, this is it where we start breaking down all the politics. But it is performance driven. And like if you're not performing, one, you're definitely not going to beat the politics. And
Yep.
two, you're not going to help yourself out on staying on a roster.
Yeah. Now, something that just speaks to your character, and I want to highlight this as we continue on the story. You decided to start a nonprofit, just doing things above and beyond yourself. And that ends up winning you a certain award that is awarded for NFL players. So, talk a little bit about the mission behind the nonprofit, how that idea came to be, and the award itself.
Yeah. So one of my friends was asking me about this the other day, because I'm not like with that nonprofit, I'm not doing as much with it right now. But my thing, like my overarching the theme here with my experience in the NFL is like take advantage of like what you're doing when you're doing it.
Yeah.
And at the time, like when we were really diving into this nonprofit, it was during COVID. And, I was looking at one of my neighbors and I'm like, bro, we have so much time right now. And like, there's a ton of people that are in need. So we just like full sent with it. Now, is that same model sustainable when, COVID's not a thing and you have a quarter of the time that you had? Absolutely not.
Yep.
However, for me, I was like, what can I do right now to make a difference,
Yeah.
where people don't have to be in person. We can do all these different things. So that's how it came about. And fortunately enough, the Chargers recognized that. And I won the Walter Payton Man of the Year for the Chargers. That's like, that's why you're in the NFL, to be able to do stuff like that. And for me to be able to represent the Chargers like that, it really is like super, super cool.
Yeah. Now, to your point, using your platform, right? You use your platform for good there, and you're also using your platform for good for you guys, probably financially right now in the social media world. So talk a little bit about, the drive behind that between you and Allison and really what you're creating there, because it's pretty, amazing what you've done.
Yeah. It is. It really is. And I won't ever shortchange it, because like what we've been able to create is like does take a lot of time and effort. What my wife's done. I mean, like my wife, I tell people this, like she's not in the NFL. My wife is a normal person who has built this platform from dust, right? Like,
Yeah.
and she's talented, she's good at what she does, but she's built it from nothing. But what I always like to think about it, and it's like I was saying with Local Human, our nonprofit, like guys have to take advantage of this. And like you were mentioning people outside of football, like anybody, like you have windows of time in your life where you have to capitalize.
Yeah.
And if you don't, that's okay. Like maybe you're choosing a different path, or maybe it's not as big of a priority to you, which is also okay. Everyone's different.
Yeah.
But if you do have goals, you have to take advantage of the windows of opportunity. So for me, currently in the NFL, I've had like what's the word, tumultuous, like my career's been all over the place. And I'm like, so how can I like take all that but still create this silver lining, right?
Yeah.
Like being in the NFL is the silver lining. So I don't want to downplay that. But it's like, how can we create something else that's bigger than that, right? Like given all the circumstances and all the things that can change. So that's what we've done. We've taken advantage of it. I've realized that people like the idea of the NFL more than they like who you are within the NFL, which is very important for NFL guys or NBA guys or anybody to realize.
Yeah.
Because that's the game changer. But we have fully, sent with it. And it's been really good. Like you said, it's been really, really good for us. It's been like, I mean, quite literally life-changing for us.
Yeah.
And I'm really thankful that I have my wife though, because she's the brains behind this though. Let's not get it twisted.
Well, I mean, it's a great pairing, right? You guys feed off each other well. And I think the other piece is, you said it, hey, someone maybe doesn't want to step into it, but that's okay if you don't want to step into it, but make sure it's just because you don't want to, not because you're afraid to, not because you're nervous about what's going to come from it. Because I'm sure there's plenty of guys that give you a hard time in the locker room. Oh, dude, another TikTok, another social media post. And you're like, yeah. But right, that's a real thing. And for somebody that maybe isn't as comfortable or confident, that could be the thing that prevents them from posting the clip. It could be the thing that prevents them from pursuing that thing that they're actually passionate about. They're afraid of what everyone else will say.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, Phil, it's that what you're saying lasted like the first like maybe year.
Yeah.
And then once people are like, oh, how many followers do you have? And you explain it to them, and then you explain the opportunities and you explain all these different things. Then they're like, hey, bro, can you actually like give me some advice or like
For a
and
consulting fee, I can. For a consulting fee, I can.
Well, no, I'm the opposite, Phil. I literally tell guys, I'm like, bro, I will give you shout outs. I will repost your videos. I don't care. Like, cause that's why my TikTok has grown, because I don't care.
Yeah.
So I will shamelessly be like, hey, like, let's do a funny video, or like I'll put you like just in the background of one of my videos, but tag you. But like, I don't think guys understand one, that football ends, and that's part of being a great football player, is thinking like that.
Yeah.
So it's commendable. And two, that again, it's so much bigger than football and sports in general. And in fact, the world of media is so much bigger. And I don't want to get on a tangent, but nobody took, like, I went in the locker room when Tom Brady signed his $350 million deal with Fox. I went in the locker room and I'm like, am I the only one who saw that? Like, and I'm not talking about the money. I'm talking about the fact that like that is the power of media.
Right.
So if you're a guy who can't make that on the field, what should you be thinking about then?
Right.
Hey, how can I, you know what I mean? Like, and I don't think it clicked for guys, and not even just football guys, anybody. Like Phil, it's literally what you're doing. Like, it's so much bigger than just, football, right?
Yeah.
But we're hyper competitive and we're in it. And again, putting the blinders on is how you become a successful athlete.
Yep.
However, you have to have the big picture. So that the Tom Brady thing also is just game changing in my mentality.
I love it. Now, once again, being the NFL is this awesome thing, but there's also this business aspect of it, right? So we've got Chargers, we've got Browns, we've got Colts, we've got Raiders. It's like I don't know if you guys are following this on the map, but that is not in the same, 50 square mile, radius here. That's kind of about as all over as you could have been. I mean, you haven't been to New York yet, I guess, but like, right? Like you're
Yeah.
moving and that adds stress to a person, right? I mean, there's unknowns and unpredictable pieces of that. So talk a little bit about, just the moving, but you and Allison staying cohesive through it. I mean, I know that's not easy on her either.
Yeah, there's no right answer. Like I
Yeah.
don't even have a good answer for it. It's I mean, having to move, like let's see, since 2020, since my last year with the Chargers, I mean, we've done multiple cross country trips and not just driving, like literally our whole lives are moving.
Yeah.
We've lived in I think 4 different states since then, 4 different apartments, multiple housing transactions. It's just like a lot
Yeah.
about moving. It's just very difficult. And I'm sorry, Phil.
You're good, man.
But it just adds a whole nother variable to it that's very challenging. And I think like now my wife and I have kind of like figured out the formula. We have a traveling pod
Yeah.
that kind of has like our like whatever city we're in, like a 1 bedroom apartment worth of stuff.
Yep.
But past that, it's just pure survival mode because it's brutal.
Yeah. No. So, this last year being with the Raiders, it was an interesting year with the Raiders, right? Really, really high expectations going in. I mean, one of the toughest divisions, right? I mean, they were predicting a Broncos team that had a great quarterback to be the worst team, which means that there's really high expectations for everyone else. And just through all of the year, right? I mean, gosh, you trade for Devontae Adams, so you got a big name wideout, so that puts a lot of excitement on the offense. But then you have the preeminent quarterback of the Raiders franchise for the last 8 years get parting ways. I mean, talk a little bit about just handling some of that within a locker room. And once again, I know you're on the defensive side, but still, those things bleed over into just the team unit.
Yeah, Will's crazy. So I was with the Raiders like very a short period because it was like Browns were like, "Hey, we don't like you anymore," and the Raiders were like, "Okay, we'll take you," which is just that's the world that we live in the
Yeah.
NFL. But it was crazy because I walked in, so I signed, and I'm like, I had to get to the facility super early, and I walk in, the first person I see is Derek Carr, and he's like, I'm like, first off, does he just do this every day? He gets here at 6 a.m. And he was super nice, but he was on his way out. Again, I'm like very confused. But sure enough, that was like the day that they were like, hey, we're gonna like essentially bench you and not release you, but they were kind of parting
Right.
ways. So definitely stepped into a locker room that had already seen, this adversity. But I think the Raiders organization did a good job there at the end. I mean, I think they like have crazy attention to detail, which not every organization has.
Yeah.
And I think that's like kind of what we were talking about earlier with like leadership. What do you lean
Yeah.
on? In their case, it's like, what do you lean on? Well, you're going to lean on a super intense schedule that's going to keep you on your toes and on your P's and Q's. But yeah, it's challenging. When you're walking into a locker room, you got 2 games left, probably not going to the playoffs. Your quarterback's not playing anymore. It's definitely a weird situation. However, I do think that they were making the best of it.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I want to just highlight about you, and I think this probably carries over from your philanthropic side, the Walter Payton Award, but is just that when you carry yourself with character, you never know where it's going to turn up, right? The world is a small place. The NFL, I'm sure, is a small place, right? A D coordinator somewhere says, gosh, I knew that Isaac guy from the combine, or I knew him when he was there and I was there. And I want to make sure we bring him into the organization. So, when you handle yourself with class and you handle yourself and respect others, it does open more opportunities down the road. Whereas if you leave on bad note, that may be the end, right? Because there's just other places where they're just not going to tolerate it.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of young guys, myself included at the time when I was younger, you forget that like these are people, right? Like they go home to families, like their
Yeah.
interaction with us versus their interaction with their wife and kids, very different.
Yep.
And like you have to remember like they're humans, and the human element is super powerful. Now, I don't think it's the game changer because coaches don't have as much power as people think they do.
Yeah.
However, having a coach that's on your side certainly doesn't hurt,
Yeah.
right? So like if I'm a betting man, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get to know this guy. But a lot of it is like you can't fake it because again, they're humans. You just have to be a good person, which I mean, it's helped me out a lot. I think it's been like really beneficial.
I love it. Well, is there anything else or any other pivotal moments you want to make sure to highlight thus far in your journey?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, again, I think just the biggest thing recently is just like all the social media stuff. It's just been
Yeah.
really game changing for Allie and I. But I think the biggest game changer is probably meeting my wife. Just this whole journey, like you can't fake the idea of having a great partner. I mean, this is like everything we talked about, it's been all over the place. Like all the places we've lived, all the things we've had to do. I was with her at Notre Dame through that 4-8 season. Like there's a lot happening in life. And I've just been really fortunate to have somebody who's just down the ride with it. So I mean, I guess that's the biggest pivotal moment, which kind of leads us to today with everything that's going on. But yeah, I'm super thankful for my journey. It's been fun, and I appreciate you having me on here.
Heck yeah, my man. Well, hey, can't wait to do this again in a year or two, and just the following continues to grow, and there's more stories and
Oh
more
yeah,
things to highlight.
yeah, both of us, right?
I think so. And I mean, shoot, I have what I took away from today is you're gonna give me a shout out on social media, and we're gonna go be sidelined at a Notre Dame game here this coming fall. So
Yeah, right. You're like it's a done deal.
I mean, I'm all about it. So you just let me know date and time, and I'm there,
All right, easy money.
my man.